Today I'm going to work on a camcorder. This one's a Canon ES600. This was given to me. It's non-functional. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get this thing going or not. A lot of these 8mm cameras had major capacitor issues. We're going to take this one apart, see if it's something that's workable, and see if I can get it going. But no guarantees. Let's see what happens. I was given this camera. I'm told it does not work. I was actually given it to actually get rid of it because it's shot. And I said to the person that owned it, I said, well, if you don't want the camera, I'll recycle it for you. Maybe we'll use it as a teardown. But, you know, before using it as a teardown, I think I would like to, you know how they made the wide angle work on this? They just stuck a lens in front of it. I figured I would give this thing a shot and see whether can figure out what's wrong with it. This is an ES600 Canon from 1995, so you know it's a few years old, about 25 years, I guess, somewhere around that. So let's see whether this thing will do anything. First of all, do we have any power? I got the power adapter plugged in. Let's just see whether the power adapter is actually outputting any power, because not having tried anything, I want to make sure that I got power to it. Make sure we're not just looking at a power supply problem. But as you can see, we have 7 volts. So the power supply is working. Let's plug the camera in and see whether the camera does anything. I'm told it doesn't. And I get a picture in the viewfinder from the camera. It's a color viewfinder, and if you look in through here, you'll see that it does actually produce a picture in the viewfinder. So that part works. So what part of this thing's not working? Probably the VCR is not working. Well, interesting, that opened. And this looks like a Sony A mechanism. Well, I can see that the pinch roller on this thing is looking pretty sad. Look at the pinch roller. It's got stripes on it. Let's take the side cover off on this just to take a look at it and see. This camera might actually be savable. Wouldn't that be something? To tell the person that gave it to me that said it didn't work, if I can get it working. I'm transferring all their tapes over to digital, so they don't really have a use for it. The thing is, if this thing will work, then it might be something that they want to try and sell. That pinch roller looks to be like, what is that all over the pinch roller? It's like, it's interesting, it wipes off. What the heck is that? Like, what the heck? It's like somebody went in there with a colored pencil and put, like, you know, put stuff. It's like someone went in there when it was running and stuck a colored pencil over it when it was spinning and made perfect circles around it, and all different color. That is weird. I wonder what happened there. That's interesting. This part, so far, this thing appears to turn on. I wonder if it will actually play a tape. I guess that's the next thing. I gotta find a connection cord for it. So use just standard AV out. Excellent. Not a fancy cord on this. Let's hook it up to the TV and see what it does. First things first. Let's see if it'll play back. I just went and made myself up a little test tape because I don't have any analog 8mm tapes. The only tapes I have are high 8 and digital 8, so I've made up a regular standard 8mm tape. Want to see if this thing works. And it does not work. No picture, no sound. So we're gonna pop this thing apart, and this looks like almost looks like a Sony A mechanism. I wonder if Sony made the mechanism for this. A lot of Canons did use Sony mechanisms. This looks like an A mechanism, which was one of the ones I actually like. One of the better ones I think was Sony had was their A mechanism. The B mechanism that followed it was more problematic. But the A mechanism, it had its share of trouble too. Now, at this stage of the game, I have no idea what the problem with it is. These are longer screws here. I'm not even sure how this one comes apart. And some of these are plastic screws as opposed to metal screws. Front comes off. Okay, what comes out next on this thing? I would expect this cover just to come off, but it doesn't. It doesn't just lift off on this one. And oh, there's one more screw up here. Okay, now it should lift off. Sort of will lift off. What else is holding this up? You know that there's going to be wires and stuff here that have to come out. For sure. There's this one up front here. That one's got to come out. And that'll be the one for the viewfinder in the middle of the board here. This one here has to come undone. And this one's the power, so I'm going to leave that one connected. Well, I'll undo it for now. Just because I want to get this thing apart, I want to get this side cover off. So what I'm looking to do is I want to reseat these connectors, because it kind of almost looks like a head that's not, the signal's not coming off the head, and it's usually these connectors come unseated. So what I want to do is I just want to unseat and reseat these connectors. I'm just removing the ground screw for the head drum connector, so I can remove the connector and reseat it. This was a very common problem on this A chassis, and this is a Sony A mechanism. This is the head drum, right? The wire that connects right to the heads. So I want to make sure that it's not that it's seated properly. I just tried moving it a bit, but this time I actually unplugged it completely. We'll reseat it. The connector problem is quite well documented on these Sony A chassis. Because what happens is you lose one of the connections, and it can cause the head to spin out of in the wrong phase, especially if it's one of the ones that connects the PG sensor or the Hall effect sensor to the servo. The head drum turns out of phase and it's switching the wrong head. The head's not in contact with the tape, basically, is the one that's switched on. So sometimes it's just a simple matter of reseating those connectors
and it will solve the problem. Unfortunately, that hasn't done that on this one. And the heads are not dirty, as far as I know. The heads are not dirty. They have been cleaned a couple times. I have not done the fingernail on here though. Okay, now I can see a little more of the actual mechanism. There's another connector here that plugs into the head. And these have also been known to come loose. See, I got no sound either off of it, so it's not like a video problem. It's the signal's not being picked up off the tape. It's either a preamp problem or a head problem. I think the alignment might be off by like 2 miles on this thing. Just looking at the way the tape is this guide loose? Oh, this guide's really loose. This guide is really, really loose. Yeah, the alignment is off all right. The alignment is so far off because there's a actual guide pin that's missing. This one here. There's supposed to be a pin right there. You can see that one's missing. Here's this one on this side. So there's a guide pin that's fallen out of this thing. I wonder if it's still inside the chassis and I can shake it and it might fall out. That would explain why my alignment is off by so far. Besides the fact that the guides are all loose, there's an actual pin that's missing. And quite often when these fall out, they fall out into the camera itself. But I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything rattling around, and nothing fell out of this thing when I took it apart. Now there's still a chance that the original one is still in here and it's fallen down in behind the mechanism and it's jammed somewhere. Wouldn't be the first time that, you know, the pin fell out and it got in behind the sliding mechanism and it's stuck somewhere. Wouldn't be the first time that has happened on these. So this will be a lost cause unless I can find one of those, but I'll keep my eyes open for one and we'll see what I find. Okay, I have found a guidepost from a different camera and I may be able to fit it into this one. The difference is this one's got a smaller, fit into a smaller hole on the base. But this one here, if I could get this thing into here and glue it into place, I may be able to make it work like that. So I'm going to mix up some JB Weld. I'm going to set that guide in there and just kind of hold it in place until it kind of sets up, and then I'm going to let it sit for a while. So I'm going to have to hold it so that it's flush with the base at least until it starts to set, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, there's the guidepost. There's a shark in those waters there. I think some of the JB Weld is just touching the tape a bit here, so I'm just going to break a bit of it away that got around the edge of the guide here. There we go. I think that little bit there might have been binding the bottom of the tape a bit. Give you an idea where I am now. Take a look at the picture. I am looking at this on a CRT monitor just because it's easier to adjust on a CRT monitor. I can see the top and the bottom of the picture and which guide needs to adjust. I may not be able to get this perfect just because it's the wrong guide pin, but get it as close as we can. Almost there. It's fairly close, but every time I think it's gonna hold there, it lasts for a few seconds and then it drifts again. This isn't the only problem that this unit has. It also has a problem with the torque on the rewind. If you put it into rewind, look at the torque. If I stop this, it'll actually stop the motor. The slip clutch is not working. So on rewind, it'll chew up the tape. That might be why I'm not able to track it properly. The tension may be too high. Something's not working over here. Maybe that guide pin is jammed in here somewhere. I shook it and nothing happened, but the guidepost that came out is somewhere. Who knows? Who knows where it is? Let's just take out this plate there. See why the tension is so high on rewind. This is the slip clutch here. It's not slipping. Try and remove the hub. I'll take off this side of the tape tension arm. I think that's the side of the tape tension arm that comes out. And then I should be able to remove this hub and see why it's frozen. Oh yeah, that's completely frozen there. We'll just pull it apart and see what's going on with it. So this is the magnetic material that's attracted to the metal base, and there's a little separator in there to keep the two of them separate. And for some reason, they were binding together, so I just kind of freed it up. That should probably fix the rewinding problem on here. We'll put this sensor back on, or this reel table back on, and wind the back tension band around it again, which is just a piece of wire in this case, piece of fine wire. And then this yeah, I know, tweezers would make it easy, but I don't have a pair handy. That goes back in there kind of like that. And there's a screw that goes down through there to hold that in place. Goes down through here somewhere. And screws it down into place. Let's see if it'll rewind now. Well, now it rewinds. Wonder if that'll help the picture. Okay, I've got the top part of the picture pretty much straightened out now. It's going to get the bottom portion of the picture a bit better. That's probably as good as this thing's ever going to get, to tell you the truth, you know. It's not perfect by a long shot, but it's certainly about as good as I'm going to get this thing. You know, I think that's probably as good as this isn't the only thing wrong with this camera. There's also no sound. I don't know if that's just because some of the plugs aren't plugged in on the side. I don't think the sound goes through any of these though. I don't think there's a headphone jack or anything on this that would cut out the sound. I mean, as you saw the picture there, it was almost perfect, but I don't have any sound on it, and I know there is sound. Anyway, this was more of just to take a look to see what went wrong, why this wasn't working. And at first I thought it was going to be something nice and simple like one of the connectors, because that's the type of symptom that has. As you can see, I missed the guide initially because where that guide is located it's not really easy to see. It's right there. If I point to it, there it is. It's not really easy to see a missing guide because it's kind of covered up. It wasn't until I actually had the mechanism open and I'm looking at it thinking, this doesn't look right. And I look, oh, there's a guide that's missing. Now normally, if the guide had been still inside the camera, which a lot of them are, a lot of them fall out and they fall inside the camera, you can just put the original guide back in and it's good as new because it fits properly. And I've done hundreds of those, and when that's the case, when the guide's inside the camera, well, normally you can hear something rattling before you open it up. You know that something's loose, and then you know where to look. On this one, I didn't look there because obviously it wasn't rattling. And the guide is completely missing. Anyway, this one here is a lost cause. We'll just eject the tape. The only way to fix this camera would be to change this entire guide block, which would be possible if the guides were still available. But the problem is they're not. Now, if I were to come across another A mechanism, Sony, and that's what this is a Sony A mechanism. So if I were to come across another Sony A mechanism in the future that has a capacitor issue, for example, not saying that this one doesn't, it probably does, but because I got no sound either, but that could be the alignment being off as far as it is. The FM sound is not going to decode, it's going to mute. So I don't know that there is a sound problem with this. I think probably the only problem with this unit is this broken guide, or the guide that was missing. And if I can come across another camcorder that I can steal the guide assembly out of, then we'll revisit this video. I'm going to put this back together. I'm not going to scrap it. I'm going to put it together. I'm just going to put it in a box. And if someday I do come across a guide that I can put into this thing, we'll be revisiting this camera and getting this one working. But I'm going to leave the video now because I think I've done as much as I can, and that is to show what went wrong with this and show how to service that clutch, because you're going to see that on any of these Sony A mechanism cameras. Get a look at this chassis, okay? Keep get a good look at this chassis. This is the Sony A mechanism. It was used in Sony and Canon. When you see the Sony A mechanism camera, it's got the big mode switch right there, mode encoder switch there, and this type of deck. This slip clutch goes bad. This one goes bad too, by the way. It's the same thing on both sides, but this one hasn't failed on here, because if it did, it would not be able to fast forward a tape. It would all jam up. If I put it on fast forward, you'll see that it should work. Yeah, fast forward is here. See, fast forward works, and rewind works now. What happened on that was I don't know whether it was the magnet was deteriorating or the washer deteriorated. The magnet itself, it's not a mineral type magnet. It's almost like one of these plastic type magnets, like this stuff here, this material here. This is a screwdriver magnetizing tool, by the way. That's what that is. You can demagnetize your screwdriver by rubbing it on that side, and magnetize your screwdriver by rubbing it there. This is kind of it's not a mineral type magnet. It's got like a soft material. You can see it scratches. It's almost like rubberized magnet. But and that's what the hubs are made of. They do deteriorate after a while, and they get kind of like almost a sticky film to them, and it was sticking to the gear. So if you remember the hub, when I pulled this top piece off here, it had the magnet on the bottom of this, and then there was a stainless steel plate below that I think it was stainless steel that was attracted to, and then the little washer to keep the two of them. There's a little mylar washer in between to actually keep the two of them from physically sticking together. That provides a slip, and what this does is this provides torque limiting, because when the motor is driving through the pendulum gear here, this thing here, pendulum gear, when this is driving the cogs below, of course, it's directly connected by a toothed belt to the motor. So when this is driving this in rewind, the rewind, of course, is being limited because the pinch roller is still engaged, so that's what's spooling the tape on. You need slip on this. So the magnet and that mylar washer is providing the reduced torque. Well, when that binds, of course, it first of all will damage the tape. That's first of all, because it's going to stretch the tape. It's going to stall the motor out for two. That's probably what put all the excess stress on this pin to begin with, to pull it loose, was because, of course, this is still threaded. The tape is going around this pin and then around this roller, and this pin was just press fit, as is this one. That is probably what worked this thing loosened to begin with. So that's an important one. If you've got one of these 8mm camcorders that won't rewind, check that. If it stalls on a rewind, check the torque. Take that hub apart and check it, because it goes bad on a lot of these cameras, especially if they've been sitting around for a while. So that's what we learned on this, how to fix that, and about the guide that comes out. And as I say, if I had the original guide to put back in, things would have been a lot happier as far as this camcorder goes. But that's it. I'm ending this one now. I've spent far too much time on a lost cause. Something else I've noticed on this camera. The tape end sensor is not working. The tape end sensor on this one is there's a LED right down here. You can see it. It's right there. It's kind of pink in color. Won't see any light coming off it because it's infrared. And what it does is it shines down this light pipe and then up through this little plastic reflector, and then through the tape to the end sensors on either side. Now, normally when there's not a tape in the machine, it would know that there's no tape because there's light being received on both ends of the tape. But if you notice, if I put this into play, it will start the head spinning and start the machine running. I can go through all the modes. This way I can check the torque. See, I can go through all the modes, and just like if there was a tape in it. It shouldn't do that. So obviously this little LED down here is not emitting a signal that is being read by the end sensors. So that's a second problem with this one. And that's usually what causes that, is the flex cable. Because the chassis slides back and forth, there's a flex cable here that connects the end or rotation sensors and also supplies power to the LED. It gets its power through this flex cable that runs along here, and usually what happens is that flex cable gets damaged. That's more of a problem on the B mechanism chassis than the A. But that flex cable still, it moves every time the tape is loaded and unloaded, and eventually they break. And that was an unknown issue. And you can see that repaired on I did a B mechanism chassis several years ago, where I actually changed this part that slides up and down the chassis on a B mechanism. And I was looking for the chassis that actually came out of the old camera, because I was thinking maybe there might be the same guide on it. I think the B is a little different though. But I'll continue to look for it. If I can find the guides on that old chassis, I'll see if they're the same. And if so, we might say, well, I'd like to see if I can get this thing working, just for get it working fully, just for fun. But anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. You'll see all my newest videos, and let's get my subscriber count up to over 100,000, as I really want to get my silver play button from YouTube. Thanks for watching.